Daniel Walsh had lived in the little blue house on Sycamore Street for 3 months when he first heard the knocking. It was a soft tapping, like fingertips gently brushing wood, barely loud enough to wake him. But it did. He glanced at the clock by his bed, 3:12 a.m. Not 3:10, not 3:15. 3:12 exactly. He sat up, confused. The knocking stopped instantly. At first, he assumed it was pipes, or maybe the wind shifting the old panels of the house. He moved in during the late fall, when the nights were cold and the house still settling. He dismissed it and went back to sleep. But the next night, it came again. Tap, tap. Tap. Daniel's eyes shot open. 3:12 a.m. this time, the sound wasn't from the walls. It was from the hallway. He got out of bed and walked to the door. The house was silent, so silent he could hear his own heartbeat. "Hello," he whispered. Nothing. And yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting. Listening, smiling. The next morning, he searched the hallway, tapping every board, checking every doorframe, but nothing sounded like the knocking he'd heard. He told himself he was imagining things, but the house wasn't done with him. By the end of the first week, the event became routine. Every night at 3:12 a.m., tap, tap, tap. Daniel tried wearing earplugs. He tried playing rain sounds. Once he tried staying awake all night on the couch. It didn't matter. At 3:12 a.m., the tapping always came from the hallway. Until the night when it didn't. Until the night when, instead of tapping, he heard breathing, slow, deep, right outside his bedroom door. He froze, sweat beading on his forehead. He forced himself to speak. "Who's there?" The breathing stopped. A long silence stretched. Too long. Then tap, tap, tap. And the taps were coming from farther down the hall now, as if the thing wanted him to follow. The next day, Daniel decided he'd had enough. He measured the hallway, photographed every inch of the house, even called the landlord. "Maybe you've got raccoons," the landlord said. "Raccoons don't knock," Daniel replied. "Maybe they're talented raccoons." Not helpful. That night, Daniel stayed awake again, this time with every light in the house on. He sat in the hallway with a notebook, determined to record the phenomenon. Everything remained silent until the moment the clock turned to 3:12 a.m. The lights flickered, the temperature dropped, and then the hallway stretched. It didn't grow in a dramatic visual way. It was subtle, like the shadows pulled the walls apart just an inch. Then another inch, then a foot. Daniel blinked hard, thinking he was tired. But he wasn't imagining it. At the end of the hall, where there should have been a blank wall, he saw something new, a door. A door that had never been there before. He felt a cold wave of panic. He checked the photos he'd taken earlier. No door, no seams, no hinges. But now it was there, and something behind it was knocking. Tap-a-tap. Tap. Daniel approached the door slowly. He felt every instinct screaming at him to run. But another part of him, fear mixed with curiosity, pulled him forward. The door was old, much older than the house. The wood was dark, almost black. The brass knob was tarnished green, and the frame looked warped, like it had been burned once, long ago. He reached out and touched the knob. Ice cold, he tried to turn it. It turned easily. He hesitated. Something pressed against the other side, like a palm resting gently on the wood. He could feel it through the door. He pulled his hand back, heart pounding. "No," he whispered. "Nope, not doing this." He backed away. Then the doorknob turned on its own. Slowly, deliberately, Daniel fled back to his room and slammed the door shut. The knocking continued, louder and louder, until exactly 3:13 a.m., when everything stopped. The house went silent again. He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day was a blur. Daniel called in sick to work. He barely ate. He kept replaying the moment the knob began to turn on its own. By evening, he decided, he had to know what was inside that room. He prepared a flashlight, his phone, a baseball bat, and the conviction that the moment the door appeared again, he would open it and end this nightmare. He waited in the hallway again. 3:11 a.m., 3:12 a.m. The lights flickered. The hallway stretched and the door appeared. But this time it was already open, just a crack. A sliver of darkness leaked out, deeper than the shadows in the house. Daniel gripped the bat and pushed the door fully open. The smell hit first, damp, earthy, almost like soil freshly turned at a grave. He shined his flashlight inside. It was a small square room, maybe 8 feet across. The walls were stone, not drywall. The floors were dirt, and there were scratch marks everywhere. Long, deep claw marks gouged into the stone. He took a shaky step forward. The door swung shut behind him. Daniel spun around. No! He grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Something whispered behind him, very close. Daniel! He froze. The flashlight dimmed, flickered, died. He stood in absolute darkness. The whisper came again, but now it was all around him. We've been waiting. He felt cold fingers brush his shoulder. He screamed and threw himself at the door, pounding, kicking, begging. Let me out! The whispers grew louder. More voices. Layered, hungry. Stay with us. Stay. Stay. Then the door opened. He fell into the hallway. The lights surged back to life. It was 3:13 a.m. The door slowly vanished, the hallway shrinking back to its normal length. Daniel lay on the floor, shaking. He didn't sleep, he didn't move. He didn't breathe for what felt like hours. Daniel should have left the house that morning. He should have packed his things and checked into a motel. But he was exhausted, physically, mentally. He collapsed on the couch and slept through the entire day, waking only when the sky was dark again. He had forgotten to set an alarm. He woke naturally at 3:11 a.m., 1 minute before the tapping, 1 minute before the whispers. He sat up, heart in his throat, because the door, the impossible door, was already open, and standing in the doorway was a figure. Tall, bent, arms too long, no face, just smooth skin stretched tight like paper. It stepped into the hallway. Daniel couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The creature raised a finger and tapped the wall. Tap, tap, tap. He understood then. It had never been knocking. It had been learning, mapping the walls, finding its way out, and now it had. The creature leaned in close, its head tilting with a crackling sound. And in a voice made of all the whispers from the room, it said, "Thank you for opening the door." Daniel never left the house. When the police finally entered weeks later, the house was quiet. The hallway was its normal length. There was no door, no secret room. No scratch marks, no sign of Daniel at all. Just 3 taps on the hallway wall, faint but unmistakable. Tap, tap. Every night at 3:12 a.m., neighbors swear they hear it echoing from the empty house. And sometimes, if you stand close enough, you might hear a whisper too. Stay, stay, stay. Please like and subscribe for more video like this.